Hey guys, this video is over energy in the atmosphere. So it's how energy is transferred from the sun to us. Make sure you are taking your notes so that you can use them on your quiz. You will have one sometime this week. So energy from the sun. It drives our winds. It drives our ocean currents. It allows our plants to grow. And it makes life possible on Earth. If the sun were not there, we would not be living. The sun's heat is energy that flows from one object with a higher temperature to an object with a lower temperature. Heat always travels from high to low. Heat is transferred through the atmosphere in three ways: either conduction, convection, or radiation. Three different things can happen to heat energy from the sun. The first one being conduction. Heat is transferred through molecular motions from warm to cold, and it is caused by direct contact. So that means that in order for the heat to be transferred, the two objects must be actually physically touching. If they are not touching, the heat will not transfer through conduction. Your next one is convection. And this is the transfer of heat by the flow of material. The substance could be air or it could be water. And the heat circulates through the atmosphere. Okay, so there's a warming and cooling. So convection ovens work this way. The heat will rise and then cool off and sink, and then rise and then cool off and sink. Convection currents in heated pans. Okay, the warm water will rise and then cool off and sink, and then rise and then cool off and sink. Here's a great picture of it. And it's also how it happens in our atmosphere. So the heat gets close to the ground and warms up, and then it rises and gets further from the ground and cools off. Then it gets closer to the ground and warms up and gets further from the ground and cools off. So here our warm air rises. You can even see it. The warm, moist air will carry the water up into the clouds, and when they cool off, the water droplets will form the clouds. So you can see even how tall they are here. Okay, so here's an animated image showing heat rising and convection currents in the outer boundary of the core and cooling at the surface. So convection currents are even happening underneath our feet in the mantle. Okay, it's what causes the different parts of the plates to move, these convection currents. The important thing to remember with convection is that there's warm material rising and then it cools off and sinks. It's a very circular motion. Convection currents are caused by very hot material in the deepest part of the mantle rising, then cooling and sinking, then rising, then heating, then rising, and then repeating over and over again. So remember, it's that circular motion. The third one is radiation. Radiant energy is the transfer of energy in the form of rays or waves. Okay, so these are those waves we were talking about when we talked about wavelengths. Radiation waves come that way, and heat is transferred that way. So when you stand outside and the sun feels warm on your skin, okay, that's radiation. You're not touching anything. There's not material moving. It's just the form of radiation. Apparent heat of a fire. So when you have a fireplace or a campfire and you stand near it, okay, again, that is radiation. There is a little bit of convection going over there. The warm air will rise, and then it will cool off and sink, and then that cold air will be attracted to that heat again. But the heat that you stand when you stand right next to a flame is also radiation. So here's kind of a picture. Convection, okay, you would feel that heat if you put your hands directly above the campfire. Radiation is if you're standing next to it, you feel the heat. Conduction, if you've ever gone to roast marshmallows and you've put your marshmallow in that fire and it's melted, that's conduction. As is unless you actually use a stick, if you use like coat hangers, they'll conduct that heat up to your hand. So if you've ever felt your coat hanger get real hot, that is another form of convection or of conduction. Okay, so here's another great picture. The radiation is the heat coming either which way. Convection is happening on the inside. The bottom of the pot will warm up and it'll carry heat through and circulate it. Conduction, that pan handle will get hot unless it's made out of something that's an insulator. So here's the Earth's energy budget, kind of how all of it is used. So we have 100% of solar energy coming from the sun to us. About 6% of it is reflected by the atmosphere. About another 20% is reflected by the clouds. You have about 16% that is actually absorbed and kept from the atmosphere. And you have about 3% that is absorbed from the clouds. About 4% is reflected from Earth's surface. And our land and oceans actually absorb about 51% of the heat and energy coming from the sun. Of that, about 7% will be conduction and rising air and will be radiated into space to form clouds in the atmosphere. About 23% is carried to the clouds by latent heat of water vapor. About 15% is radiation absorbed by the atmosphere and radiate directly from space to space from Earth. Okay, so you can see that the energy is always moving and it's always going somewhere, whether it's being reflected, absorbed, or radiated back out. We use 100% of the solar energy all the time. Okay, so there's the end. If you have any questions, please feel free to come ask me, and I will see you guys later. Bye.